The Way of Kings. So after the whole Oath Pact getting abandoned, we meet Seth, son Villano, and we see this man in white, and he sucks in these
spheres they use for light and denomination, the storm light.
And he's going to kill this man named Gavilar, who is the king of the Alethi. He goes around and he can change his location based off of what are called lashings. A basic lashing, which changes his direction. An advanced lashing, which melts two things together. Or a reverse lashing, which pulls this light in. Hired by the Parshendi. He goes and kills Gavilar. And in his blood he writes, "Find the words, brother. The most important words a man can say." So 5 years later, we meet this man named Kaladin. And he's like, "Bring me the little ones. I want to save them."
They took the little ones.
Another time skip happens and we don't see Kaladin again until he's in this gladiator-esque carriage. We meet Gaz, who runs the slaves here.
He tells Kaladin that he is in Bridge 4. So what they have to do is they have to hold up these bridges, which take about 25 people to run across the plains.
These plains are similar to A Bug's Life, where you have a bunch of chasms that you have to cross, except the chasms are massive.
These chasms that they put the bridge down, and then the army crosses over them, and then they pick them back up and run across these chasms for hours and hours and hours. When they get to the final assault, these Parshendi
are the same ones that hired son Villano to kill Gavilar, and why the Alethi are fighting them. It's a race to see if the Parshendi or the Alethi will get to these gem hearts, which we're about to see first.
They are shooting at the bridgemen as they put down their final bridge. We then meet Shallan. She is an artist, and she is taking a boat to
get a soul caster from someone named Yasna.
Her family had one. They're in big trouble. They need it back. So she's going to steal from one of the most important women in the world. So we first see Yasna use this soul caster as one of the king's nephews or nieces or someone is stuck underneath this rock. So she uses the soul caster and transforms it into
smoke.
Kaladin is going to kill himself, but this wind spren, so there's these sprens that kind of follow wind, fire, just these random spren. And she's like, "Hey, you should try one more time." He's like, "I can't. I've killed Tien, his brother, and I've killed all the slaves when he tried to escape." She's like, "Just one more time." He's like, "All right, cool, bro."
That still leaves
one time.
Then we meet Dalinar. Dalinar is the brother of Gavilar, who just got killed, right? But this is 5 years later. So he is a shard bearer. These are 6-foot-long blades, which after 10 heartbeats appear.
Shard blades are best described the same way Kingdom Hearts describes a keyblade. They materialize after 10 heartbeats and are attached to the wielder. The only way to be given a shard blade is to either kill a wielder or to be given one.
His son is Adolin. He also has another son named Renarin, and he is the uncle to the now king, who is Elithkar, who is son of Gavilar. Okay, I think we're all caught up. He's just running around being a little kid, but he's not really a kid. He's like 18, 19 years old. And he's like, "Oh, I think someone's trying to kill me."
Everyone is trying to get these gem hearts, which are super valuable. So the Parshendi are trying to defend it. The bridgemen are trying to help get the army across to it. In order to get into one of them, you have to kill this giant crab-like creature, which has multiple legs and is massive.
As he runs over, his strap breaks on his horse, his leather strap underneath, and he falls off and almost dies. Parshmen are different than Parshendi. So Parshendi are the ones that hired Seth, son Villano. Parshmen are slaves, more or less. We also meet someone named Wit, and he says that he's the king's wit, so as you come onto the king's island, he makes fun of you. As the story progresses back to Kaladin, he learns all his bridgemen's name, and he becomes the bridge leader. He tells Rock to go to the back of the bridge, because the front of the bridge is where all the arrows come in, but luckily all the arrows miss him.
Rock is from the mountains and thinks that Kaladin is an airsick lowlander.
Kaladin's also trained by his father as a surgeon, so after the bridge runs, when people are hurt, he helps them and heals them up, and then they tie them to the bridge and take them back, and he gets in all sorts of trouble for that. We go back to Shallan and Yasna, and Shallan is under the guise that she is going to be Yasna's ward. Yasna's teaching her about morals, and so they go into this alley where there's a bunch of bad people.
He's a ruffian. Thugs? Have they come for me?
And she uses her soul caster to turn one into fire and turn one into stone. One into blood, I believe.
As they're leaving out of their palanquin,
Shallan steals the Soulcaster and replaces it with the broken one, which she has fixed, so that she can take it back to her family and get them all rich again. We arrive back at Bridge 4 and Kaladin, and Rock starts cooking them supper every night,
trying to bring some joy into the Bridgemen's lives. But
Gaz, who is Kaladin's lieutenant, I don't know, the guy who runs them, his slave owner, he says, "Bridgemen are supposed to die. Bridgemen are supposed to die." Shallan, as studying for the ward, is then met by Capsule, who is an Ardent, who wants to make sure that her soul is still intact because Yasna is a heretic and doesn't believe in the Almighty. So he comes and gives gives Shallan jam and bread all the time. Kaladin starts teaching his team to start running the bridges sideways so that they hit the arrows instead of hitting them straight on. For this, because they do it in one of the assaults, it stops all of them from dying, but it kills all the other members of every other bridge crew. So Kaladin is strung up in a high storm. High storms come every, I don't know, couple frickin' days, man. And his spren is Syl, and she starts holding up her hands to try to stop the storm. And no one lives in a storm. But before he's about to go into the storm, Teft gives him a sphere, and he says, "A sphere in the hand during a storm you can survive," is the old saying. Teft is another one of his bridge members in Bridge 4. So he's holding the sphere, Syl is holding back the high storm, and Kaladin's strung up. Well, Kaladin also told his members that his bridge, that he would survive this. He would open his eyes after the high storm. And what does he do?
He opens his eyes after the high storm.
So as he's healing, Teft, who is the one who gave him the sphere before, realizes that that sphere can also be used to heal him. He thinks that he might know who Kaladin is, what Kaladin is. Another one of Elithkar's feasts, because he has one every night. Very similar to Mistborn. They have feasts every night. This is what rich people do. We meet someone named Sadeas. Sadeas is another High Prince. High Princes are all of the way that Alethi's hierarchy works. They are all light eyes. Light eyes are better than dark eyes. I don't know. That's just the way it works. Elithkar names Sadeas High Prince of Information to try to figure out who's killing him. Navani, who is Gavilar's widow, shows up and is like, "Hey, boo!" And Dalinar wants to be High Prince of War. Dalinar has all these visions. Every time there's a high storm, he goes into this craze, and he keeps hearing the words, "Unite them." So he realizes that he has to unite the High Princes. So he asks all the other High Princes to join him, and they all say no. So he says, "We must," as Sadeas. As we get back to Shallan, she has the Soulcaster, and she starts seeing these shapes of people all around her as she draws her pictures. She then soulcasts to get away from these shapes, and a bunch of blood populates everywhere, so she has
to cover up the fact that she didn't steal the Soulcaster from Yasna, she cuts her wrist. As she's recovering in bed, Capsule brings her some jam and some bread. Yasna tries some, which she never has before. She tries some bread. She sticks her finger in the jam.
Well, it turns out that the jam is the antidote to the bread poison. Capsule also has some bread, but Yasna, having the jam, accidentally soulcast it and changed it
to her version of strawberry jam. She's never had any before. Shallan, having had the bread poison, has to give the Soulcaster back to Yasna so that Yasna can pull the poison out of her blood.
The High Princes are mad at Kaladin because he keeps surviving when bridgemen are supposed to die, so they put him on chasm duty every day. In this chasm duty, he starts training his soldiers, his bridgemen, to be soldiers.
Moshe is very receptive to this training and becomes one of the best spearmen that Kaladin trains. Because of his birth order, Rock cannot fight, but he is very good at shooting arrows. They collect all the spheres from the people that had fallen into the chasm from the high storms or from the assaults.
And then shoots them underneath a permanent bridge, which then they will pull up and use when they cross these bridges to go on the other assaults. Seth, son Villano, who I made fat for some reason, the killer in white who killed Gavilar, must obey anyone who holds his oath stone. That's just what he does. He realizes that King Taravangian is holding his oath stone. King Taravangian is where Yasna was getting the rock off of the Wicked Witch of the West. Dalinar has another vision of the shard blades being left by the Radiants, the desolation. He asks them why. Why? As Kaladin's walking around one day and realizing that maybe something is off with him and he can start drinking in Stormlight, he meets this man named Wit, who tells him a story, and he says, a story doesn't live until it's imagined in someone's mind, and he gives him a cool little flute. Well, he starts realizing he can suck in Stormlight just like South Sun's on Vellano, and he starts putting rocks on the walls of the chasm to go put the gem bag up, does a backflip off. Lopin, who is another one of the Bridge Fours, he only has one arm. He's like, nice work, Goncho. Sadeas tells Dalinar that they should go on an assault together. As they go on an assault together, Sadeas'
Army.
all leaves him, and he's like, sorry, bro, your honor got you killed. Dalinar, his son Adolin, are all surrounded by Parshmen. Kaladin's like, we have to go back. And Syl's like, say the words! Say the words, Kaladin! Life before death. Strength before weakness. Journey before destination. I will protect those who cannot protect themselves. Kaladin jumps off the bridge as they're pushing it across and turns into this maniac killer, streaming light out of his eyes, his mouth,
His penis killing the Parshendi.
in order to get to Dalinar and save them. We see him save both Dalinar, Adolin,
And of the 10,000 men that Dalinar brought, about 2,000 of them are left.
he has to defeat a Parshendi shard bearer, which is dope. We cut to Sadeas, who is telling Renarin and Navani that he saw both Dalinar and Adolin die. She burns a cool little glyph that says justice. So Dalinar comes back and he says, for the bridge crew, and he gives his shard blade up. Sadeas is like, oh, cool, these things are worth fortune, so yeah, you can have them. So he looks at Cal and he's like, look at me.
Sure.
You're captain now.
Which, again, Captain as a Dark Eyes is not something that can happen. He's like, you are going to protect my family. And then we go back to Shallan and Yasna. And she's studying the Voidbringers, which we don't really know who they or what they are, but their names suggest a lot. We didn't destroy the Voidbringers, Shallan. We enslaved them. Remember how the Parshmen and the Parshendi look alike? It's because they might be the same.